This one, as this is World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar. Let's begin with the headlines. Afghanistan and Pakistan agreed to an immediate ceasefire during talks hosted by Doha following a week of fierce border clashes. Qatar's foreign ministry says both sides also agreed to hold follow-up meetings to ensure sustainability of the ceasefire. The U.S. State Department says it has credible reports that Hamas is planning an imminent attack against civilians in Gaza, warning that such a move would be considered a ceasefire violation and invite retaliatory measures. A convoy carrying the bodies of 2 deceased hostages arrived in Tel Aviv. So far, 12 out of 28 bodies have been handed over by Hamas under the ceasefire and hostage deal. Millions are marching across the U.S. and the world as part of the No Kings protest against what they call President Trump's autocratic tendencies and anti-democratic actions. More than 2,600 such protests have been planned in major U.S. cities, small towns, and even some foreign capitals. President Donald Trump says the United States is sending 2 suspected drug traffickers back to their native Ecuador and Colombia after a military strike on their drug smuggling submarine in the Caribbean that killed 2 others. Flood operations resume at Dhaka's Hazrat Shahjahan International Airport after a major fire at its cargo terminal brought under control. Interim government forms investigation committee to investigate the incident. And huge crowds took to the streets on Saturday in all 50 U.S. states to vent their anger over President Donald Trump's so-called hardline policies at No Kings protests. The Republicans ridicule the marches as Hate America rallies. Well, No Kings rallies reflect the frustrations of Trump's critics on policies ranging from immigration and education to national security and health care that have reshaped the government and democratic norms with unprecedented speed since he took office. The No Kings protests saw more than 2,600 protests across the U.S., with demonstrators marching, chanting, and holding signs that America is not a monarchy.
That the guy down the street violates MS, but not a peaceful act.
Well, we want to show our support for democracy and for fighting what is right. I'm against the overreach of power. I believe in 3 branches of government. There's just been almost too many things to list.
The movement has been fueled online with social media campaigns driving protests in cities like Washington, New York, Chicago, and Atlanta. More than 300 grassroots groups helped organize the protest in the U.S., while American Civil Liberties Union trained tens of thousands of volunteers to act as marshals. Now, big political names are backing it as well. Senator Bernie Sanders, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton among them. Organizers say this is a defining moment. Addressing a rally in Washington, D.C., Senator Bernie Sanders warned of President Trump's authoritarian drift. He also slammed tech billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg for their support to the U.S. president.
No, President Trump, we don't want you or any other king to rule us. Thank you very much, but we will maintain our democratic form of society. We will not move toward authoritarianism in America. We, the people, will rule. This is about a handful of the wealthiest people on earth who, in their insatiable greed, have hijacked our economy and our political system in order to enrich themselves at the expense of working families throughout this country.
The No Kings protests were not just limited to the U.S. In Canada's Toronto, hundreds of protesters held signs and dressed up in costumes for the No Tyrants protest right outside of the U.S. consulate. In Berlin, demonstrators emphasized the international significance of the protests as several gathered to take part in the rally. Similarly, about 400 protesters gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy in London, expressing their dissent and dissatisfaction against Trump.
No tyrants, no fascists,
We feel it's important to speak out when we see things that not only that we don't agree with, but things that are really detrimental to society. And that's what this is. The Trump administration, the MAGA movement, and it's not just in the United States, but it's globally. It's around the world. It affects everybody.
Meanwhile, several Trump's Republican aides, including current House Speaker Mike Johnson, have termed the protests as hate America rallies.
And we'll see what happens. So we're ready to act.
Moreover, an AI video posted by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance showed Trump putting on a crown as people behind him kneel, including former U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. While Zelensky arrived with hopes of securing Tomahawk missiles and American support to counter Russia's offensive, he was left high and dry at the end of the meeting, as Trump seemed more keen to broker an immediate peace than upgrade Kyiv's arsenal. Now, Zelensky failed to obtain Tomahawk missiles for strikes on Russia from the meeting, as the U.S. president emphasized that he didn't want to give away what U.S. needs for itself. Now, the U.S. president said that the two leaders would talk about it and they could finish the ongoing war without needing the Tomahawks.
One thing I have to say, we want Tomahawks also. We don't want to be giving away things that we need to protect our country. We have a very strong country right now. We have a strong military. We have the greatest military in the world. We have the greatest weapons in the world. I want to get this war over.
Zelensky also returned empty-handed on the question of territories. Since the beginning of the war, Moscow has made significant advances on ground and claims control over large swathes of land in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. Now, Trump, who had earlier suggested that Ukraine could take back the territories lost to Russia, seemed more inclined for the two sides to freeze the current front line and put an immediate end to the war. The U.S. president acknowledged that any other option would make things too complicated and said that he had conveyed this to both Zelensky and President Putin.
In my opinion, they should stop the war immediately.
You go by the battle line wherever it is, otherwise it's too complicated. You'll never be able to figure it out. You stop at the battle line, and both sides should go home, go to their families, stop the killing, and that should be it. Stop right now at the battle line. I told that to President Zelensky. I told it to President Putin.
However, freezing the current front line would translate into huge losses for Kyiv, a prospect that Zelensky has opposed vehemently in the past. Trump also made no mention of imposing stringent sanctions on Russia, something that he had earlier claimed was on the table to force Moscow's hand into peace talks. Instead, Trump now wants Zelensky and Putin to get along a little, while Zelensky has said that he is open to direct talks with President Putin in a bilateral or trilateral format. The Kremlin has ruled out any such meeting without high-level groundwork. Ahead of the meeting with Zelensky, Trump had an over 2-hour call with President Putin, during which the two leaders agreed to meet in Hungary's Budapest in the near future, the first since the Alaska summit. The ball is now in Putin's court. It remains to be seen whether Moscow will agree to freeze the current front line, pause the war in Ukraine, and accept unconditionally the prospect of Ukraine arming itself further. Now, if Putin agrees, it could spell the start of negotiations for a lasting peace in Ukraine. In other global news, Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to an immediate truce at talks mediated by Qatar and Turkey. Officials from both sides met for peace talks in Doha after over a week of fierce clashes and fighting. Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that during the negotiations, the two sides agreed to an immediate ceasefire. They also agreed to hold follow-up meetings in the coming days to ensure the sustainability of the ceasefire and verify its implementation in a reliable and sustainable manner. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif and Intelligence Chief General Asim Malik joined the talks in Doha, while the Afghan side was represented by Defense Minister Mohammad Yaqub. Ahead of the talks, Kabul had accused Islamabad of violating an earlier 48-hour ceasefire, which briefly put a stop to nearly a week of cross-border clashes that killed dozens of troops and civilians on both sides. The Taliban government said that Pakistan had bombed 3 locations in Paktika province. Now, Pakistan's Information Minister Ataullah Tarar confirmed that security forces targeted Gul Bahadur militant group in the border areas of North and South Waziristan districts. Now, Pakistan claims it has killed over 100 terrorists so far. Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid wrote on X that their forces had been ordered to hold fire to maintain their dignity and integrity of its negotiating team. Now, according to Afghan officials, at least 10 civilians died and 12 others, including 2 children, were wounded in the latest Pakistani airstrikes in Urgun and Barmal districts of Paktika province. Now, locals from the Afghan district of Urgun claim that they were hit by at least 3 strikes, adding that the death toll was at least a dozen.
In the third attack, I was injured. Blood was flowing from my hands, you can see it. We are civilians, not from the military. A piece of shrapnel also hit me here. During the third attack, they took me to the hospital. In this attack, around 12 to 13 people were martyred, and 17 others, including myself, were wounded. The local people came to help us. The situation was extremely bad.
Now, 3 local cricketers who were there for a tournament were among those killed in the attack. In protest, Afghanistan Cricket Board announced that it had immediately withdrawn from an upcoming Tri-Nation T20I series involving Pakistan.
Last night I was right here. I have a room here. It was around 1:30 a.m. I was listening to the news, and suddenly there was an explosion at our guest house. There were guests inside, the cricket players who had won their match and had come here for dinner. As soon as the explosion happened, the dead and the wounded were lying right here.
Afghan officials say that in the last 4 years, Pakistan's military has violated Afghanistan's border over 1,200 times and breached its airspace on 710 occasions. Since 2024, 102 civilians and Afghan border guards have been killed in these actions. Now, after months of bliss, financial markets have started to turn extremely volatile. After the crash on Friday last week, a subsequent reversal this week saw markets oscillate between gains and losses. 6 days of volatility across assets show a deeper anxiety taking hold amidst credit fragility fears. Now, broadly, the narrative this week was around the back and forth in threat and posturing between the U.S. and China on their trade policies. Gold extended its blistering rally to new peaks, with the yellow metal hitting an all-time high of near $4,400 before retreating on Friday. While still, gold closed out the week with about 6% gains. Brent crude fell over 1% last week and is now down about 25% since President Trump's inauguration. Cryptos extended their slide with $600 billion erased on Friday. The digital assets saw about $2 billion in liquidations, adding to the record liquidations of $20 billion in the week prior, which wiped out over 1.6 million traders. Unlike past crashes, there was no retail rush to buy the dip, just silence. Now, turning to Asia Pacific stock markets, the seesaw in U.S. and China trade rhetoric hit Chinese and Japanese stocks. However, the recovery in Indian stocks extended to the second week, with the blue chip Sensex index gaining nearly 2%. Indian stocks reached their 52-week highs and are poised for record highs. The OC index also showed a modest gain of 0.4% after the country touted rare earth minerals investment bet. In the Americas, Wall Street stocks ended with gain this week with a tidy gain, extending a bull market that's already adding $28 trillion to its value since April lows. The S&P 500 ended the week 1.7% higher despite a revival in long dormant fears about hidden credit losses after bankruptcies and fraud-linked write-downs hit banking stocks. The bounce in stocks sent Wall Street benchmarks to their best week since August. President Trump's retreat from tariff threats boosted sentiment for a Xi meeting and a trade deal later this month.
I think we're getting along with China. China would like to have something as of this moment. We'll be meeting in a couple of weeks. We'll be meeting in South Korea.
You think
myself.
will go forward?
I think so. It looks like it's going forward. I think so. They want to meet. We like to meet. I have a very good relationship with President Xi, and we're going to see what happens.
The Brazilian and Canadian stocks too gained on expectations of better trade deals with U.S. The Canadian index gained about 1%, with tech, consumer, and industrial stocks leading the rise. The Brazilian Bovespa rose nearly 2%. Gains in industrial, electric power, and public utility sector led the index higher. Now, across the Atlantic, the surprise move was the gains in the French stock index. Despite budget worries, the French CAC gained over 3%. However, that optimism did not translate to the German and UK indices. The German DAX took the biggest hit, with 1.7% losses for the week. On the other hand, the South African index showed modest gains, with a nearly 0.6% rise. Well, having looked at market moves, let's now turn to the overall economic outlook. Let's take a look at the Asia-Pacific region first. In Asia, India still remains a bright spot. China's economy continues to show a loss of momentum. Beijing faces deflation risk, a recession in its real estate and consumer demand. U.S. trade wars continue to weigh on Japan and Australia, with the outlook for most of the other regional countries in the negative. A slowdown in global trade from U.S. protectionism is likely to offset any green shoots from domestic policies in Asia. In the Americas, the government shutdown is delaying the release of much-needed data. Now, the problem is to piece together the economic jigsaw puzzle from other sources. Other data reports cities are not looking great. Weakening business activity and a cooling jobs market will likely push the Fed to cut rates again this month and in December. The outlook for Canada, Brazil, and Argentina is also negative because of Trump's trade rhetoric. In Europe, the situation looks much more worse from deepening troubles in controlling budgets. France is not likely to meet its budget target, with politics compelling economic disasters. UK continues to struggle to fill a budget black hole, and Germany is losing its shine as a growth engine. For most European countries, the best news will likely be that they avoid a recession. However, easing trade tensions could boost the region's outlook. Trump and Xi's meeting this month will likely shape the next phase of the global economic outlook.
I think that things have de-escalated. We hope that China will show the respect that we have shown them. And I am confident that President Trump, because of his relationship with President Xi, will be able to get things back on a good course.
Now, a high-stakes clash awaits in Doha as India takes on England in the Women's ODI World Cup. After 2 consecutive losses, the hosts faced a must-win scenario to keep their semi-final hopes alive. 4-time champion England, on the other hand, are unbeaten and brimming with confidence. After a promising start to the tournament, India find themselves under immense pressure. Losses to holders Australia and South Africa have exposed flaws in both batting and bowling. Skipper Harmanpreet Kaur has failed to fire and now needs to deliver, but she is not alone. On the bowling front, India's attack struggled to close out games. Australia successfully chased down a record 331, while South Africa sneaked past 3 wickets thanks to a match-winning 84 from Nadine de Klerk. Playing at home brings support, but also expectation. A 3rd straight defeat could put their semi-final hopes in serious jeopardy. Now, England, meanwhile, have made a statement in this World Cup. 3 wins in 3 matches, including a 10-wicket demolition of South Africa, have positioned them as early title contenders. However, their unbeaten streak was briefly under threat when Pakistan came agonizingly close to their first one-day international win against England. Heavy rain in Colombo forced the match to be abandoned, and the teams had to share points. While England's top order has fired, questions remain about middle-order consistency. Still, 4-time champions are well placed to reach semis. However, things are starting to look tricky for India. The women in blue has 3 league matches left against England, New Zealand, and Bangladesh. If India wins all 3, they qualify for the semi-finals no matter what other teams do. If India loses to both England and New Zealand, their chances of making to the semi-finals are almost over. All right, with that, we call a wrap to World Data for today. Don't go anywhere. Coming up, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to visit Israel this week for the implementation of the Gaza peace agreement. We'll get you all the details on that story on the other side. Keep watching WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
As people across the world celebrate the Festival of Lights, we get you a list of movies you can watch this Diwali season, along with a festive style guide that you can take cues from. Also know all about Hayao Miyazaki's timeless films of Ghibli universe. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
This Diwali week, In the spirit of illumination and discovery, we're exploring a house at the bottom of the ocean. We're boarding a ship to Antarctica. We're taking a ride on hydrogen-powered race cars. We're discovering hidden secrets that lie beneath layers of paint on Caravaggio's paintings. And we're taking a virtual tour of browsers powered by AI. All this and more on Tech It Out, only on WION at these times.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
This week on the West Asia Post. A no-show that speaks louder than words. Saudi and Emirati rulers skip Gaza Peace Summit. What's really brewing in the Arab world? Turkey's Air Force ambition faces an American hurdle. Can Ankara's new Air Force era take flight? Abu Dhabi rewrites the rules of marriage. Love stories now go digital.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.